Hello, it's Katrina at the Sewing Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make the block that is in this quilt, and this is called a Snowball block, and this quilt was made by Jan, and she's used Janet Clare's range of fabric, and I'm going to show you how to do it using a William Morris range of fabric. So I've already made 2 of the blocks. And what you need is a selection of light and dark fabrics for this to work. So your pieces are cut at 3.5 inches. So I've got 2 strips, and that's what's going to form this piece here, this light piece. So I have 2 strips that measure 9.5 by 3.5. So this is my light fabric. I've then got 5 dark fabrics. So that's my corner pieces and my center. And then I've got 2 more light fabrics, which are these end pieces here. And this one I've done the other way round. So I've done my dark with my light center. So this is my light with my dark. So all of the squares are 3.5 inches square. So there's not too many measurements to remember. So squares are 3.5 inches and your rectangles are 3.5 by 9.5. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out these corner pieces. So I'm going to pop them onto my rectangles there and there. And I'm just going to mark those. Now you could, if you wanted to, fold it in and press it so you've got a crease line, and that's the line you're going to sew on. So you're going to sew from the centre out to the corner. For today, I'm just going to mark those with a pencil, and that's going to be my stitch line. So from the centre to the corner. And I'm just going to pop a pin in that top to hold them in place. Just take a minute to make sure you've got them nice and lined up. So this one's a bit wobbly, so I'm just going to line that up a bit better than that. And I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to sew down this stitch line. But what I'm also going to do whilst I'm at the machine is I'm going to do my centre block, and I'm going to join it to my 2 light squares like that. So that's going to be my centrepiece there. So I'm just going over to the sewing machine to put all those together. So as always, we're using a 1/4 inch seam. And then I'm going to sew down the centre of the drawn line. So I'm just putting my needle at the end and I'm going to sew down this line. And now I'm going over to the iron and I'm going to press these. But before I do my pressing, I'm just going to show you on this camera. You can see my stitch line here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away 1/4 inch from there, because when I flip this back, we're going to have that which forms our corner of our block. So I'm just going to get my cutter. And what I do is if I put the ruler onto the seam line, so I'm putting the 1/4 inch line onto the seam line, and then I'm going to cut that away. I'm keeping these little triangles because I'm sure I'm going to find something I want to do with those. So just make sure you're cutting on the outside of that line. So I've just put my 1/4 inch guide onto my stitch line, and I'm going to cut away. So you can see that's the shape we've got, and then I'm going to press those back. So now I'm going to set my seams and flip them back. And now I'm going back over to the sewing machine and I'm going to join this block. So I'm going to have one with the corners at the top. I'm going to have the blue in the centre and then the corners at the bottom. So I'm just going over to the sewing machine to join these. And the great thing with this is there is no matching. And that's how we create the snowball block. So I'm now going to go back over to the quilt behind me and I'm going to talk about how these have been put together, because when these have been joined together, they've been joined in a way where we've got some lights and darks like this. So we would have another light one there. And what that does is that creates another interesting block. So I'm just going to go over to the quilt to talk more about that. So you can see how this one's been put together, and this is what I was saying about when you've got a light corner and a dark corner and you've joined those together in such a way that you've now got this interesting block as well. So it's not just your snowball block, your light and dark create an hourglass block. So this one measures approximately 63 inches square. And it is 7 blocks across by 7 down, but you can make it as big or as small as you want. And this one's been beautifully quilted, so there's a fancy stitch around the bottom of this block here. And then Jan has quilted along here, and she's also done a straight stitch there. So we've got a lovely fancy quilting stitch. Then we've got some straight stitches. And with these straight stitches, they then echo around the hourglass. So there's a lot going on. It's really interesting. It's lovely. It's a beautiful quilt. There is no border on this, and I actually don't think it needs a border. So it's just got this lovely blue binding, which is like 2 tones of blue, light and dark. And I think it really finishes the quilt off beautifully. And I think that's a really good example of what you can do with a fabric range. So as always, make it your own, have fun, and I look forward to seeing you here in the sewing studio the next time.